Thank you very much. It's wonderful to see you all here. Thanks very much for coming. The last time I was in this hall, we were in one of the side halls actually, and I delivered my lecture, Hamza Yousaf, Man, Myth, and Muslim. And Hamza Yousaf lasted about 2 weeks after it, I have to say. So I'm not sure who to choose next. Maybe my spoiled for choice. Now, David mentioned, the other thing to say about Hamza Yousaf is we'd planned to take this lecture on tour around Scotland to go to different cities, but what did he go and do? He went and resigned on us and pulled the rug from under our plans. Now, David mentioned I'm going to go and cut the ribbon at the nursery, which is a huge honor. I'm delighted this nursery is starting now, and it was an honor to go and open that. And I thought, as leader of the Scottish Family Party, to be honest, I don't do much ribbon cutting. I don't do much plaque unveiling. I don't launch many ships. So going along to do that is a really great opportunity. So thanks again to Andrea. Thanks to Mark as well for bringing those words. Really appreciate you coming to visit us and sharing your thoughts today. Now, with the Scottish Family Party, normal service will be resumed shortly. Now, what I'm meaning by that is this conference, you'll probably notice, has been a bit different than usual. Normally in the Family Party, we talk about our faith. We're not ashamed of that at all. I don't think anyone will listen to me for very long and think, oh, I wonder if he's a Christian or not. I mean, I'll talk about my faith very, very explicitly. But as a party, we're a secular party. We're open to people of all faiths and none. But things have been a bit different today because we have got this strategy for the coming year to make a particular effort to try and reach out to Christians and to churches. So why is that? Why have we decided to do that? Well, a big part of the reason is the Reform Party. I was thinking of saying whether everyone could boo when I say the Reform Party. We won't do that. That would be childish. So it's the Reform Party. It's a bit of an issue for us. And in the election, we've been stepping up in each election. Modest steps, but we were on our way. I think if Reform didn't exist, I think we'd have cracked 2% probably in this election, our next little step. But Reform do exist, and I think they took support from us. Which support did they take? It would be people, they like the Family Party, they like the freedom of speech, they like the trans stuff, but the pro-life don't really get that. The pro-marriage stuff, maybe don't really understand that. So maybe they think, oh, well, Reform seems to reflect my values better. So I think people like that have tended, they're going to vote Reform, they'll tend to drift off in that direction. And generally, those people tend, and I'm generalizing here, but they tend not to be Christians. Pro-life people do tend to be Christians. So we thought for our immediate future, where should we target our efforts to grow the party, strengthen our support? We thought we'd take special steps to reach Christians, which is why we've had we've heard a lot more explicitly Christian talk today. Now, before you go, do visit our store. As Leo mentioned briefly, but there's various things we've done to try and help to reach Christians. We've got the new set of leaflets. Do take lots of them. Think of who you might like to give them to. Take lots of them. We hope they'll be really helpful and powerful. I mean, my book, do distribute my book far and wide. We've got the little sheet here, which has got some ideas of how to engage with Christians, engage with churches from the Family Party point of view. I think there's some really important advice there. Do pick up a copy. And our questionnaire as well. The idea of the questionnaire is to do it face-to-face, sit down with someone. This is not a Christian thing. This can be with anyone. And it's got some questions about the person's political beliefs and their opinion of the Family Party, the political priorities. So part of the reason we're doing the questionnaire is we're interested to know what people think. What do people think about the Family Party? We do want to know that. We're going to compile results. But the other thing the questionnaire will do is it will start a conversation as well. So you'll be able to have a really fruitful, I hope, conversation with lots of people as you do the questionnaire. So do take a big handful of them, and as opportunity arises, sit down for 10 minutes and have a chat with people, and we'd be very interested to hear the results. Now, numbers here today, I'm looking out. This is a pretty decent crowd, but I think it's not quite as many as last time we were here. We were a few more last year. Now, why is that? I remind you of the story in the Bible of Gideon, who has an army of 32,000, but God said to him, that's too many, and he ended up whittling it down. He ended up with just 300. Now, we don't want anything like that. We're just slightly down on last year. That would apply across the party. Our membership probably slightly down from a year ago. I say votes, we've got our challenges there as well. So who's missing? Who was here last year that's maybe not here this year? What sort of people have tended to drift away from the Scottish family party? Well, I'll tell you some of the types of people that have tended to drift away. Well, some people who you'd hear them say things, and I think, I'm not really comfortable with that. Sort of ethno-nationalist, Europe's for Europeans. Sounds a bit like we don't want too many of those people of different colour around here. And you hear that, feel a bit uncomfortable. Well, those people tended to have drifted away. There was an event in Glasgow in September, an anti-mass and illegal immigration rally. And I was invited to speak at it. And some of the people who organized it, they're people we've worked with before on freedom of speech and sex education, Gender Recognition Act. But I thought on the immigration issue, I really don't fancy it. Now, I can stand in front of a rally. I think I could be a bit of a rabble-rouser and really stir people up and get people's passions fired. But I thought on the issue of immigration, I'm not sure that's what we need at the moment. So I thought that this is not for us. This is not for the family party. So we parted company a little bit with some of the activists we've been involved in before. I actually went to the rally to see it. In some ways, it did turn a little bit ugly as well. So I think that was the right decision. So again, some people drifting away from the family party there. Another issue we've had, particularly over the COVID period, is some people took on some very, very unusual beliefs. Now, you've got some weird beliefs. So have I. Everyone's got some unusual beliefs. Now, sometimes I might believe the mainstream belief. Someone else believes some sort of unorthodox conspiracy sort of belief. Eventually, I might think, well, hang on, actually, I think they're right. And sometimes I have a bit of a weird belief, and then I end up thinking, oh, well, maybe the mainstream's right. So we all do that. But some people seem to completely lose touch with reality and go into conspiracy land. And we had some people like that who were trying to steer the family party in that direction. It was quite tense. But these people seem to have drifted away in the last year. We've had people who've been involved in the family party, really good people, being candidates or whatever. And then you start hearing them coming out with anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Not like being anti-Israel. The Jews are pulling the strings. You think, what's going on? But these people seem to have drifted away in the last year. I mean, there have been people in the family party who, when they speak, you think, oh, don't put it like that. That's really personal. That's excessive rhetoric. No, we don't think they need to be shot. In our candidate training, I always say to the candidates, I do not want to go to my interview in the BBC studio. I don't want to sit there and the interviewer to say, did you know one of your people said this? I said, I don't want that. I don't want that. And it's happened, but people with that sort of what's happened, they seem to have drifted away. LGBT issues. We've got very controversial views on LGBT issues. But you've got to be sensitive in these areas. We're dealing with people. You've got to really be careful the way we speak. But then we've had some people who weren't very careful, but they tended to have drifted away in the last year. We had some Muslims in the party, not a massive number, but we had a significant number of Muslims, and we've still got some, and they're extremely welcome in the party. But when the Israel-Palestine issue started off last year, we had some messages from some of them. If the family party doesn't take this line on Gaza, then we're off. So I said, well, we don't really focus on foreign affairs particularly. And they drifted away. You're going to be thinking, who's left soon, aren't you? I mean, what else has happened? Then you find some people, when you hear about their political identity, it seems like the football team they support's a bit tied up in it. I think, what on earth is going on? People like that, they seem to have drifted away one way or another. Now, at this point, I'd like to thank the parties that these people have drifted off to and they've been attracted to. This is Reform, Heritage, SDP. So that's what's happened over the last year. Now, it hasn't been a big strategy. We didn't sit down and say, right, over the next year, let's really clean up our act. But it's one way or another, certain people, certain types have drifted away. I think for the family party, it's actually been a very important step for us, particularly as we look to reach Christians. Because Christians can be very sensitive, very sensitive. I think sometimes they're unfair to the family party. I mean, look at the SNP. It's basically corrupt in the way it runs itself, lied about all sorts of things. It effectively functions as a wife-swapping club. But I've never heard a Christian say, I just can't be in the SNP anymore. The way they behave, their dishonesty with the finances, no. Whereas with the family party, sometimes it feels as if Christians are just looking for any excuse to say, yes, that you're bad, just like I thought you were. I couldn't possibly associate with a party like the family party. So we really need to be squeaky clean and maintain high standards in these areas. And I think that's the way we're heading. I think we've really strengthened in that regard. Now, obviously, you don't win elections by losing people. You win elections by gaining people and by growing. But in the longer term, I think in the last year, that's helped us. I think we've become a more effective political organization because of these changes that we've had. And in the longer term, perhaps particularly in reaching Christians, this has been a very, very important step. It's been fascinating, hasn't it? When there have been these inquiries into various things, the WhatsApp group messages of the political parties, they often come out into the open, don't they? Dear, oh dear. Humza Yousaf was one recently where he was like obscene as insults against people, and just, they're appalling. You look what goes on behind the scenes with these politicians. The language and the way they're just totally unrestrained, mouthing off about things. Really awful. If ever there's some sort of inquiry into the Scottish Family Party, and all of our WhatsApp groups go into the public domain, you know what? Don't worry about it. It's just not like that. It's not that just we want a surface of being reasonable and moderate and respectful. That's the reality behind the scenes as well. I mean, what a team we've got. What a team we've got. Now, before I go on to the current team, I mean, in the last year, it's great to see Michael Willis here. Michael was a fantastic chairman. We had a brilliant retirement dinner for Michael back in April. It was good to see you here. And I'll just say a few words to Alan as well. Alan Brown has been an absolutely fantastic chairman. We were at our wits' ends looking for a chairman when Alan stepped forward. But we were so desperate. We were even thinking about paying someone to do it. But Alan came forward, and Alan is amusing, just a lovely guy, and he's paid me every month. My wages have been paid every month, and he's really done a great job with the accounts. So we're trying to persuade Alan to have a little retirement dinner as well. We enjoyed Michael's so much. Now, Steve Saunders is here as well. Steve has been the chairman of the Fife branch, a very active branch. He's done a really great job over the years as well. But our current team, what brilliant people. It's been great working with Leo, with Neil, with Phil, with Gareth, with David, with Ewan, who's not here today, with Tobias, and with Mary. Mary's a key part of the team as well, dealing with the membership. Is Mary in here? Not here at the moment. Yes, so a brilliant team of people with the right values and the right character for the party. And when I meet new people getting involved with the party, I keep meeting people and I'm just thinking, these are brilliant people. These are just the sort of people we want to get on board. Sometimes you meet someone, you get into conversation, then they'll say something, you're like, right, okay. You sort of wince a little bit and think, right, okay, that's not really ideal. But I just keep meeting people and just thinking, these people are just fantastic. And I'm so glad they're getting involved in the family party. Now, at this point, you'd be quite justified to say, well, just steady on a bit. Pride becomes a fall here. We're all fallible. Who knows what will happen in the future? But I think our team is fantastic. Now, with the general election campaign, I had an interview with the BBC outside the Parliament, and I went on my bike, and I was cycling down the Royal Mile. I think maybe I had my rosette on, and I stopped at the traffic lights, and there was a workman there in his yellow jacket and his spade. He said, I know you, Scottish Family Party. I said, yeah, that's right. He said, brilliant. I love them. I really love the Scottish Family Party. I'm so glad that you're doing what you do. He said, you keep socking it to them. That Parliament down the road, it's full of a bunch of paedophiles, and it needs a bomb under it, and the whole lot of them need blowing up. I thought, okay, now a gentleman like that, I hope he votes for us. I would love to have a chat with him at some stage. But I didn't give him Tobias's email address, saying perhaps you'd like to apply to be one of our candidates. So to sum up what I'm saying here is the Scottish Family Party is maturing. It's maturing, and this is a significant stage in that process. Now, there's been a lot of change in politics around Britain. We've got Kemi Badenoch's arrived on the scene, Russell Finlay, Starmer's the Prime Minister now, Swinney is the First Minister, the Greens haven't changed, sadly. Alex Cole-Hamilton's still with the Lib Dems, Nigel Farage burst back onto the scene. It's all go, isn't it? Now, I'd love to sit down with them and ask them a few questions. I'd love to ask them, what's marriage? What's this all about? Why is it a good thing? Why is it important for society? What answers would we get? I think you'd maybe get half an answer from Kemi Badenoch. You might get a little bit of something from Nigel Farage, the others, nothing. How about if I carried on questioning? How about if I said, what do you think about lesbian and gay relationships? Do you think there are some things we need to be aware of, that these are maybe not good choices for people, and that there are negative consequences associated with them? And how about the issue of same-sex parenting? Do you believe that children are best being brought up by their own mother and father? What answers would you get from any of those characters? Zero. Zero. I don't know what they think in their own mind, but we would never know that because they wouldn't dare say it. They would say nothing. How about if you asked them pro-life? What do you think about protecting the unborn in the womb? If you asked any of those characters, you would get not a glimmer of a pro-life answer from any of them. How about eugenics? I think Andrew touched on this already. In Glasgow, you can go to the hospital, you can choose a sperm donor from the catalogue, choose an egg donor, make a baby that way. And you could choose the type of baby you want. Pure eugenics. If you asked any of those questions, any of those people the question, what do you think about eugenics? I think the answer from everyone would have been, what? Sorry, don't know. Never heard of it, never thought about it. Tell me about it. That's the situation we're in. But with all those leaders, all those other parties, I think we could talk about them at length, but let's get down to the one crucial point. For any party, do they support the killing of unborn children? Yes or no? Now, I was talking to someone on Wednesday. I went to Hustings for the council election I'm standing in. And I got chatting to a representative of the Reform Party, who's a Christian. And I was pretty upfront. I said, but Reform's a pro-abortion party. How could you support them? He said, oh, they're not. They're not. Reform's not a pro-abortion party. He said, we don't have a policy on abortion. I think, well, hang on. What's that mean? So abortion happens. So if you became the government, you've got no policy. That means it carries on happening. If you haven't got a policy to stop it, then it continues. Then he said, all right, okay. But it's freedom of conscience. You can still be pro-life and still be in Reform. You can vote according to your conscience. And I said, really, how does that work? That's what the Conservatives say. That's what people in the Conservatives say. We don't have a policy on abortion. We're neutral. It's freedom of conscience. You have a Conservative government for however many decades, what happens? Abortion continues. So Reform is a pro-abortion party. Now, I find when I speak to Christians in particular, you sometimes talk about the pro-life issue and voting, and they'll say, well, abortion's just one issue. There are lots of other issues you need to think about as well. Now, to my mind, that's like saying, now, okay, the Nazis may be involved in genocidal persecution of the Jews, but I quite like their family policy, and I think their road-building policy is quite good. You have to balance it up. You mustn't just jump to your conclusion based on one thing. I think it's like that with abortion. 18,000 unborn lives taken. This is not an issue to weigh in the scales against run-of-the-mill daily political issues. This is a different thing altogether. Now, I said about the Reform Party early on. I'm going to say a little bit more about them. Now, sometimes I've heard representatives of the Reform Party, Nigel Farage, etc., they'll talk about Judeo-Christian values. I think a lot of Christians might think, oh, fantastic, that's what we want to hear. This is really what's going to bring Christian values back into the heart of our nation. I've heard Nigel Farage as well a few weeks ago. He said, we need the 10 Commandments back at the heart of our national life. Then he said, I've broken a few of them myself. Ha, 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 ha. Joke. I think, hang on. This doesn't make sense. You can't say you want the 10 Commandments back at the heart of national life and then joke that you don't keep them. Now, none of us keep them. I'm not trying to make the point Nigel Farage is really bad. I'm just saying you can't have it both ways. You can't make light of breaking God's law and then claim to be the guardian of that law as well. But I'd be fascinated to know what Nigel Farage thinks of the 10 Commandments. I mean, keep the Sabbath holy, not swearing. I mean, are these things that he upholds? I'm really, really not sure. Now, I've heard Nigel Farage as well talking about Justin Welby. Now, Nigel Farage and I would probably agree about Justin Welby. I mean, he's pretty hopeless, isn't he? Pretty hopeless. But I heard him saying once, the church needs to speak out. This is Nigel Farage. I just wish the church would speak out and speak the truth so people could hear its message. That's what the church should be doing. When I hear that, I just would love someone to say to him, okay, church teaching is that you shouldn't live with a woman that you're not married with for example. Getting drunk isn't right, etc. And I think it really exposes an interesting point. I think what we've got in Reform is they're trying to put Christian window dressing and sound bites on their policies, whereas the Family Party, we're not doing that. The Christian values, policies in line with Christian values, at the heart of what we do. So we don't need window dressing. We don't need to add the sound bites. That's what Reform are doing, because they've got their own agenda, and they're trying to put a Christian veneer on it. I mean, how about the immigration issue? That's quite a hot topic at the moment, isn't it? Now, I think the Family Party, we've got policies on immigration. Immigration is a very important issue. But another important issue is demographics. Current trajectory with no immigration, Scottish population in 200 years' time. What issues there? Abortion, obviously. You know, between a quarter and a third of pregnancies in Scotland end in abortion. How do you boost fertility rates? How do people have more children? A huge factor, marriage. There was a fascinating article on the Coalition for Marriage newsletter the other week. It's from America. There's a few ifs and buts, but this was basically what it found. As it looked over a 20-year period where the fertility rate had gone from a healthy level to a really, really low level, where the population collapse level. And the researchers looked into it. They found the number of children that married people had was the same now as it was 20 years ago. They looked at the number of people that the number of children that unmarried people had. They found it's the same now as it was 20 years ago. So what's made the difference to the fertility rate? It's just fewer people getting married. So that's what it came down to. Fewer people getting married. So encourage marriage, encourage fertility, the population can maintain itself. I'll just say as an aside here, I'm not a Catholic. And the world should be glad that I'm not a Catholic. Because if I was, I would be an absolute pain in the neck. Because I would never stop saying, we told you so. Because that's what the Catholic Church has done. Every one of these social changes comes along, they've said, no, this is not right, this is not true, and this is what will happen if you go down this road. And every time, it's happened. As I say, so you would never hear the last of it if I was a Catholic. I would be insufferable telling people that we told you so on every point. Now again, looking at political issues, the transgender issue. The Reform Party, some Conservatives, the Alba Party, they'll be quite big on, we're not having this transgender nonsense. We're standing against that. We'll stand up for women's rights. Pretty strong language. But when it comes to the crunch, they don't want to get to the heart of the matter. I mean, as Andrew said, the heart of the matter is there's a law that came in 2004, and it says a man can become a woman can become a man, if they fill in the right forms and hand them into the government. Then the government will declare that that's the case. So a fiction written into law. And that's got to go. Which other parties have the policy of just repealing the Gender Recognition Act? Get into the heart of the matter, solving the problem. Well, as far as I'm aware, none. How about the LGB aspects as well? Lesbian and gay relationships. For example, in education. Which other parties will touch that and say, well, actually, there's an issue here. There's a message being presented that's maybe not helpful and positive to young people. Reform, Alba, Conservatives, they won't touch it. But we will. Now, I've had a lot of conversations. A lot of people have said about the Reform Party to me. I'd just like to summarize the difference. The difference is this, that the Reform Party, I would say, is a cultural conservative party, culturally conservative. Now, cultural conservatism is basically, it tends to think, we like things the way they are. When things are changing too fast, or people are not comfortable with the way things are changing. Now, maybe that might be quite justified in some cases. That might be a very good point. But cultural conservatism is that things are changing, and I really don't like it. I don't like the way things are going. So it tends to be new things. So if society is changing too quickly with immigration, the transgender thing, what's this newfangled transgender thing? I don't like that. And what's going on here? Maybe even assisted suicide. Oh, there's this new idea of doctors giving out poison. Oh, I don't like the signs of that. The latest thing, I don't like that. So feeling a bit uncomfortable, a bit disorientated, a bit angry about the latest thing to come along. That's cultural conservative. Now, the way you can identify a cultural conservative is that they oppose the latest new change coming, but then 10 years later, they've forgotten about it. So 10 years ago, cultural conservatives were saying same-sex marriage, what a ridiculous idea. Of course, we don't want same-sex marriage, definitely not. If you ask the same people now, they'd say, oh yeah, of course, same-sex marriage, that's no problem at all. Oh, but the transgender issue, that's what we really need to be focused on. A cultural conservative in 1967 would have been saying abortion? Oh, no, 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 no. No, we can't have that. This is totally wrong. No, we definitely don't want to make this change in society. 50 years later, it's all fine. They're cool with that. They've moved on to other things. That is a cultural conservative. Now, if your society is heading in the wrong direction, which ours is, cultural conservatives are often right, because most changes that come along are not good. So cultural conservatives are often right. But what we've got with the Scottish Family Party is not a culturally conservative party. We're a socially conservative party. Social conservatives have principles and values and an ethical system that is fixed and stable about family, marriage, life, other areas as well. It's not based on that what riles you up this week. It's not based on what's the latest newfangled thing that we're not happy with. Now, social conservatism, it used to be universal. Every party was socially conservative, but it faded away. It faded away from the left to the right. First of all, the Labour Party lost the social conservative. Then the Conservatives basically lost it. I mean, now, Reform's not a socially conservative party. It's basically gone from the mainstream of politics. And our mission is to bring it back to the forefront because it's based on principles. Now, I'd like to read a quote to you just to summarize on this point. It's from the author Ed West. I do think he writes a lot of excellent things. So he's talking about the difference between social conservatism and cultural conservatism. He said, there's a danger, therefore, that as social conservatism fades, the right becomes a repository of the depressed, the disappointed, those in need of a cause and a leader, and people who are anxious and confused by today's moral confusion, but lacking a firm moral code of their own. Social conservatism may appear off-putting, but it offers a real vision, while the barstool variety, appealing to basic emotional brain responses, is little more than a political version of social media clickbait. Now, as I said, at the beginning, some people have drifted away from the family party. And in a sense, that's done us a favor. I think the Reform Party will do us a favor in another way as well. Some people used to think that at the political spectrum, you get to the Conservatives, then if you go even more extreme and crazy than them, well, that's the family party out there. They're out there on the lunatic fringe somewhere. I think probably people don't think that. They probably, wrongly I would say, they probably think now Reform's the extreme right-wing party, which I wouldn't necessarily agree with them. But I think it might help us, in a sense, the way we are perceived. Now, I talked a bit about the growth of the family party. 2021 Scottish election, we got 0.6%. 2022 council elections, we had 84 candidates. We got 1.35%. 2023, we threw the kitchen sink at the Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-election. I really thought this is the time. We could take a step forward, let's get to 2% or more. Huge tactical voting. Reform got 1% as well, we got 1%. The general election campaign. We've learned general elections are tough. The focus is on London. The focus is on national leaders. It was tough making any impact in the general election. 1%, that seems to be our baseline. So for the year to come, we want to grow our team, to continue to communicate widely. Scottish election 2026, we'll cover the whole country on the regional list. 2027, we'll have council candidates who will have been spending 2.5 years integrating themselves into that community, getting to know people, working out the local issues, building relationships, and then they'll come along and be a candidate. And let's see where we end up. Wouldn't it be amazing to win a councillor at that point? Well, I thought I'd just give you a quick update on the pro-life progress and the issues in Scotland. Now, the buffer zones have come into force. You'll obviously already know that. Now, it's just criminalized praying in some ways. Probably some people have said it's like a thought crime. I'm not sure it's so much a thought crime. The thing I would like to focus on with it, though, is what is actually the crime is influencing. Influencing. So you've got the situation where a woman is walking towards the abortion clinic and that child, the unborn child's life, is basically in mortal danger. And people want to stand there in the most gentle and subtle way and just provide some sort of challenge and invite someone to reconsider at that point. And that is what's been made illegal. That's what's been made illegal. So the people doing the baby killing, they're on the NHS payroll. People who just wanted in the most gentle and subtle way to invite reconsideration, then they are now the criminals. It's been fascinating talking to Christians about the vigils. You get all sorts of responses. One Christian said, well, the woman's already decided by that point, so you shouldn't go there. The decision's already made. What can you say? Another thing, you get Christians saying, oh, it's a bit aggressive, isn't it? I mean, standing in the street praying in silence, holding a sign, ask me about my abortion. Isn't that a bit too aggressive? Isn't that too a bit hard line? And then say, well, what do you do? And the answer is, well, nothing. But if I did do something, it would be a lot nicer than what you're doing. And I think, you sometimes despair in these things. But what's tending to happen now in Scotland is the people who have campaigned for buffer zones, they've won that one. So they're now on to the next thing. And the next thing is a review of abortion policy and provision in Scotland. And that's going ahead with the Scottish Government. It is underway. So the Scottish Government is having a review of abortion. And in the terms of the review, it says we are only going to consider liberalization and expansion of abortion services. So even before they hear anyone's views, even before they start the discussion, they already have said this is going one way and one way only, and that is the wrong way. Phil Tanzer, if you could head towards the stage. Phil's going to share a story in a minute. I mean, what's basically happened is during the lockdowns, women couldn't go to doctors, so they said, right, abortion pills, let's do it on the internet. Let's just send them out by Royal Mail. That happened. So there weren't adequate checks and balances, obviously. And so what happened was women eventually started taking them beyond the recommended time or beyond the legal limit, even. And then what happened then? You'd think that's when society would say, well, hang on a minute. Giving these pills out without proper supervision, this is not a good idea. Women are taking them beyond the legal limit and beyond the safe limit. But oh, no, they didn't say that. They said this just shows that we need to remove the time limit from abortion because women are being criminalized. And that's what the Scottish Government is beginning to look at. Now, Phil, if you want to come up. I was going to tell you a story at this point about pills by post and the sort of emotional consequences of it. But it was a story that Phil told me, so I thought since Phil's here, you can hear it direct. So over to Phil.
Well, I hope that my daughter will let me tell the story by myself and that she will not try to help me. So I've got a shop, an art gallery and hairdresser, and this young man came into my shop, and I often talk to people about God and the world and everything, and I live in the far, far north of Scotland, where a lot of people travel to explore nature and also, let's say, find themselves or find peace with themselves. And so we had this conversation, and I said, "Oh, are you in a relationship? Are you married?" And he said, "Oh, actually, that's the reason why I'm here. I just dealt with a very traumatic breakup." And what happened was he was in a relationship, and they had a minor dispute, and that, I guess, triggered a trauma in the woman that he was with. And they had talked before that fight about potentially starting a family. Now they had this fight, and then she found out that she was pregnant. And she said, "I'm going to have an abortion." And he backed her not to have an abortion. But he also thought that it was a woman's choice, and so he just asked not to do it. Now she took the pills, and at one point she went for a walk in the forest, and then she lost the child while she was on the walk, and then she saw her unborn child on the ground in the forest. I'm sorry. And she was devastated because she didn't think that she would see a human. And she saw a child with arms and legs, and she buried the child there in the forest. And then she took the father into the forest, and they had a ceremony there. And both the mother and the father are deeply traumatized. So I gave the father a hug, and we continued to speak. But it was still almost impossible for him to acknowledge that maybe abortion is wrong. He could see that he lost a child, that this was his child, and this child should have lived. But he couldn't look at society and say, maybe every child deserves to live. That's what we have to deal with and fight against, people that even have personal traumatic or traumatizing experience. It's so hard for them to say, maybe it's just wrong.
Thanks, Phil. But just coming back to Scotland, another thing they're campaigning for is that late-term abortions, there's been a problem in Scotland. And the problem's been that no one would do it. They couldn't get doctors to dismember unborn children, to kill them and evacuate them from a womb. They couldn't get people to do it. And so the campaigners now, the pro-abortion campaigners are saying this is an outrage. Scotland has got to get up to speed and be offering these services. There's an article in the Herald the other day. Only one Scottish doctor is trained in surgical care to legal limit. How about that for euphemisms? In other words, there's only one doctor who will dismember a baby in the womb in the course of an abortion. And there's a quote in the Herald. It said, the reason we need these surgical abortions, rather than just pills, is that we don't want women to have to endure the emotional trauma of laboring and delivering a dead baby. Well, we got that wrong, didn't he? He didn't get the memo. You're not supposed to say that, are you, from that side? You're not supposed to say dead baby. You're supposed to say pregnancy matter or aborted fetus or something. But he slipped up. He said, the reason we need these doctors to do this is so women can avoid the trauma of delivering a dead baby. And that's the direction of travel in Scotland. And it's extremely, extremely concerning. Now, I'm on the final straight now. I realize I've gone over time a little bit, but I'm on my last page. This is just to conclude. Now, I was speaking to someone a little while ago whose views I very much respect. And we were talking about the family party. And he said, I've got a concern about the family party. Maybe you're not demonstrating how many people share your values. What you're demonstrating is how few people share your values. So you're weakening the causes that you promote because you're showing that there's only 1% of people, say, who are willing to vote in an election to support those. Now, politics is a brutal business. A lot of things you might be involved in, it's pretty subjective. Yeah, it went pretty well. I think it was quite nice. Everyone had good. But with politics, you have an election and you get a number. And that's pretty brutal. So where's David Richardson? So David Richardson campaigning in East Kilbride. You've got 500 odd people. 500 people in East Kilbride to vote for him. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? Imagine that, going out to persuade. Yeah, 500. Pretty amazing. And then that comes out to the results, 1.2%. So it's a brutal business. But on the other hand, I thought about what this person said, but I think it shows us where we are. It shows us where we are as a society, and it shows us where we'll stay until people start voting differently. Now, I think there's a huge culture, maybe particularly among Christians. The government gets elected. People complain about what the government does with quite justification. They'll write to the MPs and MSPs and urge them to change their values or vote differently, and that's a perfectly good thing to do. People will campaign in all different ways, pray in all sorts of different ways, but then when it comes to election day, they'll vote for a party that's going to do exactly the things that they spend the rest of the 4 or 5 years writing to the politicians trying to tell them not to do. or campaigning against them. And it doesn't make sense. And that's a key message of the family party. You know, if there are moments that, you know, there's 1% of people who will vote for these things, who will vote for life, who will vote for family, who will vote for marriage, then, you know, that's 1%. That's an awful lot better than 0%. Now, I think as a political party, once you get to 2 or 3%, people start taking notice. And instead of ignoring you, they'll try and attack you. But they'll think, right, we've got a bit of a threat here. And we want to get to that stage as the next step for the Scottish Family Party. We've got brilliant policies. They're really well thought out. They're on solid principles. We've got an absolute single red line issue as well. There couldn't be starker. And that's protecting the unborn from slaughter. So with a growing Christian base of voters, of supporters, we could get to that 2 or 3%. That's within reach. And when we get there, that gives us more of a platform to influence public opinion. Because ultimately, that's what we need to do. We're a democracy. We're not going to get away because our viewpoint is minority. But as Phil was saying, we can persuade people. It gives us a platform. Now, I'm sure you probably watched our party election broadcast for the general election. It was brilliant. I mean, my wife, Mary, spoke about her abortion, her reaction to it, her recovery from it, healing from it. And that was broadcast on the BBC and on STV. When has that ever happened? When has a story like that ever been told? I would say maybe never. I would say our whole election campaign, all the effort, all the money spent on it, I would say it would be worth it just to get that video seen by thousands of people on the television. I'm sure when we submitted that to the BBC, I'm sure their committee would have got together with it. And they'd have got every rule book they've got off the shelf. And they'd have gone through trying to find some rule that would mean they could actually say, no, you can't show it. But they couldn't find one. And it did go through. And that was a fantastic thing to do. But awareness of the family party is growing. And warmth towards the family party is growing. I've spoken to a few people today about what's one of the most frustrating things in a political party. When people say to you, I love it. What you're doing, I love it. Everything you stand for, it's so brilliant. Keep doing what you're doing. I just can't be more supportive. But I voted Labour, obviously. I needed to vote Labour this time because we had to keep, or whatever. You just hear that time and time and time again. But it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing because the party grows, as our vote grows, and more people will think, well, no, actually, I will give them their vote. When we look in the council elections, you have a first choice, a second choice, a third choice. A lot of people put the family party down, second or third choice. I think it was going on 10%. Put us in 1, 2, or 3. If you put someone 1, 2, or 3, that's saying you're positive about that party rather than the others. So there's a lot of support there. There's a lot of warmth, and we've got that to build on. Right, to conclude, quite a few things I've said in my speech. I've been frustrated about Christians, haven't I? You know what they're like, those Christian types. But there's some things that are really great about Christians as well, in general. They tend to hit the right tone when they speak. They know that you don't call everyone a total moron. They know you don't talk like that about people. And the other great thing about them is that they've got the truth. They've got the principles that the family party is built on. Now, some people arrive at those principles by other routes, but a lot of you here in this room, a lot of our supporters, arrive at those principles through their Christian faith. So in the Christian community in Scotland, there is a massive reservoir of wisdom, goodness, truth, decency, integrity, compassion. How did it get there? I believe it's been revealed by God. It's been revealed through our God-given conscience as well. Now, I use the word reservoir advisedly, because a reservoir would be a river, but it's been blocked. It's not flowing as it naturally would. So it's a reservoir. There's a dam preventing it from flowing. And in the valley below this dam, all sorts of evil structures have been built. And they're thriving. They're thriving. And the people building these structures and living in them, they're feeling absolutely secure. They look up to the dam and think, that dam's going to hold forever. We're fine. This is the way things are now. Let's just keep building the way we are. Now, what's the dam? What is the dam that's preventing this reservoir of wisdom and goodness of truth in the Christian community sweeping down through the valley? Well, it's a set of beliefs, I would say, a set of beliefs that are not true. But some Christians believe it's not their job to sweep away evils. God's not really interested in that. Some Christians believe that their job is to be uncontroversial, but nice, often. the cult of niceness. Some Christians believe that, it's to be quiet and unobtrusive. That's what Christians should do. Some Christians believe that protecting the most vulnerable in society, that's not really a priority. There's other things they need to be focusing on. All those views are not true. But what we want to do as the family party, what we want to do with other organizations as well, is to burst that dam. Not just make holes in it, to burst that dam, to release that flood, and it can sweep away the evil structures and policies below. Now, why do we want to do that? Is it because we want our own way? Is it because we want to impose our values on other people? Make people do what we want? No. It's because we love people. We love people, so we want what's best for them. We want them to flourish through their life. Now, this dam, there are already some holes in it. Christian Concern's a pretty decent-sized hole in this dam. The family party is a hole in this dam. There are lots of other organizations that are holes in this dam. Individual Christians are holes in this dam. But wouldn't it be amazing if working together, we could see the whole thing collapse in one go? And for a tidal wave, I say goodness and truth to sweep through society. Yes, let's make that happen together. We all work together for various different capacities. Let's work to burst this dam once and for all and have this flood of truth and goodness surging through our nation, because it would never be the same again. Thank you.